Alright, so in this video I'm just going to quickly show you a couple of things that I've added to the Moodle for over the Christmas and revision, and I'm going to talk you through a mock paper and give you time limits to do the specific questions on. So when you log on to your Moodle, you'll notice there's a couple of new things here. Firstly, you've got the revision guide that I sent out last week there. I've stuck that up on the Moodle. And secondly, there is a Christmas holiday support forum. That's so you guys can add to this, you can share ideas, tips that you found when answering questions, etc, etc. And I'll also be sending out a link to this, which is a share space that I've specifically put together for over the Christmas period. So you can use that and you can sort of stick post-it notes up there, have a look at each other's work, etc. if you wish to do so. So let's have a look at a practice paper then. So we're going to pick this one. And this was 2017, I think. And this is the paper that I'm sending out with today's email. Now, first thing to notice, and this applies to every single paper that you are going to do, right at the start here, it says you're advised to spend about 15 minutes reading through the source and all 5 questions you have to answer. Now, by that they mean active reading, so they want you to actually take notes while you're reading. Okay, you'll be definitely expected to do that in the exam. You'll have access to highlighters, and even if you don't bring highlighters with you, you've got pencils to make notes in the margin. So what you do is you read through the questions. You might want to sort of start by highlighting these sections in question 2 as well, because that will be useful. You know you've got to analyse this in terms of language. So if you sort of spot some interesting adjectives, for example, thin, angular man, starved-faced, you might highlight those straight away before you've even started actually answering the questions. You're also going to sort of be reading through this, and you're going to be bearing in mind those questions 2, 3 and 4. So for instance, you just might make notes in the margin really. So for instance, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing that you've got 4 characters here and you've got a lot of dialogue. So dialogue obviously is important, so I'll probably be making notes about that. That's obviously an important structural feature that you're going to want to talk about when you answer question 3, so that's the sort of note you're going to be making. So what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to pause this video and take 15 minutes to read through the insert and read through the question paper, and then have a go at just collating your information. Get ready to start. Don't actually write anything yet. Just get everything ready. Actively read the source material. So pause it now, 15 minutes. Okay, so question 1 is very straightforward. And it's worth 4 marks, so you probably want to give yourself, to be honest, you'll probably be able to answer this in a couple of minutes tops. So if you want to pause the video in a second and just give yourself 3 or 4 minutes to answer this question. Yeah, because the only thing that you can really get wrong about question 4 is if you don't take stuff from lines 1 to 5, or if you quote the entirety of line 1 to 5. If you do that, you will not get any marks. So if you pause the video now for 3 or 4 minutes and have a go at answering this question. Okay, so moving on to question 2. Question 2 is worth 8 marks, and this question 3 is worth 8 marks. Now, the thing about question 2 and question 3 is that question 2 is your really fine detail stuff. So you're picking out specific language features, word types, word choices, that sort of thing. If you refer back to a revision guide, it does tell you that actually knowing the different types of words is very useful. I'd say the key things you want to know here are verbs, adverbs, and adjectives, because those are where the author's really crafting the language in terms of words and phrases. You're also looking for language features and techniques, so if there's any similes here, so for example, the girl with her arms flat as though irons against her side is a simile. You might want to comment on that. But it's very, very fine detail stuff that you're looking for here. You're looking for individual words and phrases, whereas question 3 is all about structure, so it's big picture stuff. You know, question 3, you're looking at the entire source, so you're no longer looking for one individual word in the entire paragraph. You're now dealing with what that entire paragraph adds. And you're looking at how focus shifts, essentially. So you're looking at where the story starts and where it ends. You're thinking about geography, so what's going on in the landscape around them, and you know what's actually physically there. You're thinking about time, so are there any interesting uses of time? Are there flash forwards, flashbacks, that sort of thing? And you're also sort of thinking about you're sort of imagining it as if you're turning it into a TV show or a film, really. So you're sort of thinking about what the camera's going to be looking at, where, and why. The 3 key questions for question 3 are what's happening, where's it happening, and why. Whereas question 2, it's all about identifying the language technique or word choice, thinking about what effect it has on the reader, and making sure you back up what you say with a quote. So what I would suggest is, because the skills needed for question 2 and question 3 are very similar, but most people tend to either be better at question 2, where you're looking at tiny, minute details, or question 3, where you can think in bigger picture sort of style things. What I would suggest is give yourself roughly sort of like 25-ish, maybe even 30 minutes for both of these questions, but divide them up as makes sense to you. So if you're better at question 2, you give yourself less time for question 2 and more time for question 3, and vice versa. So if you'd like to pause the video now and have a go, give yourself roughly 25 to 30 minutes and have a go at questions 2 and 3. Okay, so moving on to question 4 here. Now question 4 is the big essay style question. It's worth the most marks out of any of the reading paper questions, so we know we've got to take it seriously. It's 20 marks, so you're looking at about 25-ish to 30-ish minutes. And what it asks you to do is it asks you to make some evaluative statements. So it will be phrased like this. A student has said, this part of the story where Alice is sent back along the road to find out what's fallen from the roof and returns with the chrysanthemums shows how hard and cruel Hartop is, and so that all our sympathy is with Alice. So they'll give you a statement that you're probably broadly going to agree with, but there will be things that you potentially disagree with. So when it comes to this question, it's probably worth going back through and just skim reading from line 34 to the end, really, as well as the rest of the source. Because what you've got to remember is whatever question you're doing, whether you're doing question 2, question 3, question 4, you are thinking about it in terms of the entire source. While you're not expected to draw much from anything before line 34, you can certainly refer to things that happen in line 34 before that. So, for instance, if we look at the source material here, 34 goes on like that, doesn't it, really? But if we look at the source material here, we are told that the daughter is sat squeezed up and, you know, sort of like almost like pressed into the seat. You could certainly refer to that bit in your answer to question 4, provided your main focus was on something you found from lines 34 onwards. Now, the important thing to remember about question 4 is this. In each paragraph, you need to be doing all of these things. So you need to consider whether Alice is treated cruelly by her father. So you need to engage with the student statement, really. You need to evaluate how the writer creates sympathy for Alice. And remember, this is the methods used. And when we talk about methods here, it's very similar to your question 2 and your question 3 questions. So you're drawing out something you spotted. This could be a language feature, it could be word choice, it could be a structural element. Doesn't matter, but you're drawing that out and you're explaining what effect it has on the reader. And you're also quoting, obviously, to back up what you're saying. So don't forget as well, guys, if you have spotted something interesting in question 3 and commented on it, or question 2 and commented on it, although it's less likely because it's from a different part of the source, you certainly can use stuff you've identified in question 3, like focus shifts and structural features. You can use that for your answer to question 4. Just because you've used it in question 3 doesn't mean you can't use it in question 4, because you're going to be dealing with it in a different way. You're no longer just going to be talking about structure. You're going to be talking about how it creates this atmosphere, how it creates this idea that Hartop here is a bit of a monstrous father. So, what you want to do, couple of seconds, pause the video, give yourself 25 to 30 minutes for it. Okay, so pause the video now. Okay, so moving on now to question 5. Now remember, the thing about question 5 here is that it's a lot of marks. You get a full 40 marks for this, right? And 16 of those marks are going to be for technical accuracy. One thing I want to say here, technical accuracy covers spelling, punctuation, grammar and syntax, right? Now, something that's come up a lot of times when I've been talking to learners is that they've said that they'd actually rather use words that they're familiar with and they know how to spell. as opposed to taking a chance and using a bit of more of ambitious vocabulary. Please don't do that. You may not get as high marks as you'd like for the spelling, for sure, if you make a few spelling errors. However, you will more than make that up by using ambitious vocabulary in other areas. Spelling is actually a fairly minor part of this qualification, frankly. You know, as long as you are not making too many spelling errors, you are going to do fine. And it is far better to take a risk on a more complex, more difficult to spell, but more precise and better word than it is to fall back on a word you know how to spell, which isn't quite as good as the one that could be. Okay? So what you're going to do here is you are either going to write a description or you're going to write a story. This is a fairly standard setup for this exam. Usually it is a choice between writing a description or writing a story, and it is very much the case here. So don't forget that if you're writing the story, you are certainly not expected to write a complete story. If you're writing a story with the title Abandoned, for instance, what you're doing is you're writing the start to a short story. So remember, if we go back to Freytag's pyramid, that's all about exposition. So that's about setting the scene. It's about creating this unique world and creating the characters in it. And you are certainly going to want to do stuff like foreshadowing, so you might want to hint at further events in the future. You could even include stuff like flashbacks. That's absolutely fine. That's a really good way to go about it, you know. And you can certainly borrow stuff that you have spotted in the insert. You know, don't copy it wholesale, obviously, but you can borrow stuff that you have found in the insert here, okay? And they are fairly lax, you know. I mean, the title is Abandoned, but as long as you can roughly tie it in, as long as you can roughly tie in that theme of abandonment, you should be fine. You know, they're not expecting you to write a specific genre here. As for description, don't forget, guys, that, frankly, it is trickier to write a descriptive text purely because you get marks for structuring. And don't forget, one of the best ways to write a descriptive text in a structured way is to either circle various different bits. So think, okay, I'm going to focus on that meat hanging up there first, for instance, and then I'm going to focus on the lights, and then I'm going to focus on the people, you know. So your story sort of naturally flows like that. Or it seems there, this woman in the white dress here, right, you've got a protagonist. You could write this description from the point of view of her walking through the market, you know. So you're not writing a story, but you are writing about someone walking through a market and all the stuff that she can see hanging up, and the eggs and the meat, and how crowded everything is, you know. That would be a good approach for this question. So there you go. In a second, pause the video and give yourself 45 minutes on this section. So if you pause now, 45 minutes. Right, there we go. So that is, broadly speaking, a walkthrough for a mock paper. And I will see you all after the Christmas break.